Hey, ever felt like you are parenting or forming a kid that's just got tons of energy and all they want to do is be social and enjoy? You may be parenting or forming a sanguine kid.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We got a list of do's and don'ts for how you can be more influential and impactful in forming that child. But this is a fun one.
Yes. Well, of course, it's fun. It's about sanguines. So come dive on in here and help your kids to focus and figure out what they value so you can kind of help motivate them to that focus, but also really dive into their beautiful gifts and their strengths.
Create a lot more peace and connection in your home. We'll see you in there. Hey, welcome back to the Catholic Coaching Podcast. My name is Matt.
And I'm Erin.
And we are your Catholic coaches for the day. We're continuing on with our do's and don'ts of parenting the different temperaments. We did choleric last week. Now we're doing the sanguine, right?
Woo-hoo!
So who's got the really bubbly squirrel kids, sanguine kids? They're the life of the party. They're a lot of fun. They love novelty. They make friends very easily, very outgoing, very gregarious, right? But they come with their own special challenges when it comes to parenting them and forming them. So we put this series together for both parents and also for teachers, especially teachers of young children, because the challenges that we face in the home are the same ones that we face oftentimes in the classroom.
Yes.
So.
And we're excited too, because we have a lot of free resources that can go alongside of this series. We have our parenting and temperaments quick guide that you could download. We're going to attach it below. And also a test that you can take for your children. If you have littles or even kids that you want to kind of incognito, take the test for them and figure out what their temperament is. So you can put them in whatever bucket that they're in. Now, obviously, I think a lot of people struggle with they're like, I don't want to be painted into a corner. I don't want my kids to be painted into a corner. Okay, sure. But temperaments are your original disposition. And so launch pad to grow in virtue. And so we got to know what we're working with. And it's really helpful because otherwise you make it personal. You're like, what did I do wrong? Or am I doing something wrong? Or what's wrong with them? And this is just an incredible tool to be able to figure out, we think about things differently. We react to things differently. Some kids are slower to react. Some kids are quicker. Sanguines of that former.
Yeah. And forming the kids is really something where I would argue, I'm going to make a bold statement here, might trigger you. I would argue it's negligence not to know your kids' temperaments when you're forming them, just 100%. In the same way that it would be negligent for a stonemason to not understand the material that he or she is working with when they're shaping and polishing these different stones in terms of the tools that they could use and the approaches that are going to be best to make that, form that into a masterpiece, right? Yes. And that's what we're seeking to do as formators. We're seeking to help these kids, with God's grace, form them into the masterpieces, the saints that God has destined them to be. Okay.
Yes.
So all the things that we're going to be giving you on this podcast, the next couple, are going to be helping you be more impactful, influential, and better formators of these young minds, right? And using and leveraging some of the raw talents that they have in their temperament. Ready to go?
Yes. One more thing I was going to say, we are going to be giving from younger kids' point of view, but we'll kind of tap into teenagers. Here's the thing. It's mainly the same. It's just kind of the problems may be different. Yeah, the triggers may be a little bit different, but it's mainly the same.
Yeah, it's mainly the same. It's kids below the age of reason. Okay. So like Erin, you say it all the time. When you get them below the age of reason, their raw expressions of their temperaments are really there, right? But there's great opportunities also in those early ages to really shape them into a virtuous expression. Okay. So the way that we structure this podcast, we're going to start off.
I do want to say
another thing.
But also these same rules apply for kids beyond the age of reason. Yeah.
They do.
So we're not just saying we're putting it into that container. It's beyond that as well.
Sorry for being very choleric there.
Yeah. Okay.
What
were you going to say?
So just giving the structure of the podcast, we're going to start with what they value. This is very important to understand what our kids value in their actions, even when they're acting out, so that we can appeal, right, to what they're valuing. Because when they're acting out, they're seeking something good, but they're not doing it in a way that actually brings about the good that they're seeking. Okay. And so it's important to know that because that's really what motivates them intrinsically. Okay. If we don't appeal to this, our parenting or our formation will show up in a way that gets some sort of external compliance out of them, but still an internal rebellion. We want them internally compliant and aligned with a virtuous expression. Okay.
Yes.
Of their gifts. From the values, we're going to go into some situations that might trigger the sanguine temperament in this case.
Yeah.
The ways that we might react, feel triggered, and the what we'd call our list of don'ts.
Yes.
Don't do these things because it's not necessarily going to be very formative for this sanguine child. But the things to do instead, what are the do's? And so that's our journey today.
Yeah. And we're going to kind of encapsulate it into a story too. Like the whole thing is going to be kind of told in a story of a sanguine child.
We're going to make it fun.
That we know. Okay.
Let's do it.
So, all right. Sanguine, the values. All right. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. There's way more values to a sanguine, but these are just core values that we've seen show up. Number one, connection. They cherish relationships and meaningful social interactions. The sanguine kids are friends with everybody, like Matt was saying. Like you bring them to the park and all the kids they're either become best friends with them or all the kids already know them.
They're very charming too.
Very charming.
You might find that it's even hard to parent them because they'll just be like, Daddy.
They'll be very sweet.
They'll give you kind of the look and you're like, oh, I've repent of all the punishment I was about to bring your way.
They do get away with a lot.
Just go have a piece of chocolate.
Yes. Yes. Number two, joy. They value having fun and finding delight in life. And so fun, novelty, excitement, all of these things kind of fall within that joy category. Creativity. They enjoy self-expression, spontaneity, and novelty. There's that novelty again. But even just that self-expression. I would also say freedom for self-expression is another value of theirs. I am speaking from the sanguine's experience. Generosity. They love sharing their time, talents, and resources. Really, that kind of pours into that connection as well. And then optimism. They prioritize a positive outlook and seeing the best in situations. They kind of don't understand looking at the glass half empty. But you know that is actually something. If you know that they value this is the way that you can reframe things and present things as well. But also, as we go into these triggering circumstances for them, these triggering circumstances are really just these values not being there or perceived not being there or perceived to be threatened in a way.
Another big value here, and you got it written down on your page, Aaron, is freedom. Freedom for the sanguine. Okay. So if there's some sort of arbitrary impediment, like excessive rules, especially if they're rules that take away some sort of enjoyment, it's just like,
yep,
I hate you. Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. There's going to be a ton of internal rebellion there. Okay. So triggering circumstances. We know a little person. And this is probably me too, like as an adult sanguine, it's like the same thing, but maybe all right. So we have a niece who comes over and she is on the move, very sanguine, going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next.
Yeah. I don't know if she's sanguine primary or secondary, but there's definitely some sanguine in there. There's this extrovertedness about her. She's just an absolute joy and always wants to be doing something fun, and it's always wanting to move on to the next thing here as well. So like sanguines can often have that
need for novelty,
but like that need for like that quick dopamine hit because they react very quickly, right? But it just doesn't last very long. And so they can kind of get stuck in this dopamine seeking behaviors where it's just kind of like on Instagram, you just got to keep swiping, it
doesn't go away.
Hit. Because, I think we're all prone to this, but I think the sanguines are really prone to this. Would you say like prone to addictive behaviors,
Yes.
certainly from like a sensuality standpoint here as well. Not that we're calling our niece an addict at all.
No, but you see it in its rawest form. And that's kind of what we're talking about. I mean, she's young. So you see it kind of moving from next to next. And like, even as a sanguine watching this, if I'm feeling like overwhelmed, like, oh Lord, how can I even take this internally for me, like, and learn something about this? Like, so there is like a little part of me that probably wants the same thing, like that constant dopamine hit. So the triggering circumstances is being like, no, like we're not moving from one thing to the next, right?
We just set up the Play-Doh. It took me 5 minutes to set it up, or 10 minutes to set it up. Like the tablecloth is out. All of these things are open. There's Play-Doh all over the place. It's already starting to get hard, but like, and then we're going to have to throw it away. That's my different melancholic triggers there. But, and now you want to move into snack time, or you want to move into the bounce house or something like that. We're just going to, it's just like, no, just stop with the novelty. That's kind of what can start happening in me, even on an internal level. Something I think is important here for sanguines too, and we talked about this when we had our parenting group over here at the house, is they have, God has designed them such they have big desires, and they have a lot of desires.
It's like a canyon of desires.
And they want a lot of stuff. And oftentimes, like I feel like even inadequate to meet the needs. And so my temptation even here in this moment is to kind of almost shame or shut down their desires, or be like there's something wrong with them for wanting so much. And think about how that could snowball into their prayer life when they're older, and their relationship with God, where they just have these big desires. Because the big desires don't go away.
Or the addictions.
Right?
Because I think that's what draws a lot of sanguines into it. So it's like you push it down, and it comes popping back up like, like whatever, it's like a beach ball underwater. If you keep pushing it down, it's like, now I want something to really fill all these desires, and substances or whatever, these big dopamine hit things can really.
Yeah. So I think this is a really good first don't. All right. Don't shame their big desires. Don't shame even their desire for novelty. It doesn't mean that you have to grant them everything that they want, but we certainly want to make sure that we're not saying that the fact that they want it is the problem.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
You can say it's not for right now. You can say, I totally understand that you want that. So there's that validation of like understanding that. Something that helped me as a sanguine myself, and I wouldn't say my parents shamed it. Maybe teachers did and whatever, but like it eventually became internal for me. It was like, I just want too much. And even that exhaustion of my own mind, always going from here, there, and everywhere, and being like, oh my gosh. The Lord actually really gave this to me. And I think this works for parents of sanguines too. But it was Saint Teresa of Avila, who was originally sanguine. I mean, you don't really look at her that way now because she was a mystic, and you're like, definitely melancholic, deep, contemplative. No, she started off as a sanguine. She's
still a sanguine.
Right. She's still a sanguine. But the one thing about her being pierced with that, it was like the arrow of like Eros with the angel, where just she would go into these deep ecstasies. Where like you think of ecstasy, like there's an overwhelming, I would say, sensual experience that's taking place, but it's of the purest kind. It's the sensual aspect that's giving way to a deeper, higher contemplative experience on a kind of a, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like, but it's very rich and it's very big. So here's this sanguine who probably had all those desires, just like all of us sanguines do, right? And she kept bringing them to the Lord and kept going, I know you will fill this, whether here on this earth or the next. And here God is, who gave her this amazing experience. And he's like, that's what you're looking for.
Yes.
But like, I wonder, is it just the sanguines who get that like fullness? Like what a beautiful expression of like that unique design of like how, like, if we continue to bring these desires to the Lord, like he's going to fill them. He knows, he's not shocked by it. He's not annoyed by all of your desires. Like allow him, like just contemplate on St. Teresa of Avila.
Well, I mean, this is just my thought here. I think sanguines and melancholics can have very, very big, deep desires. I think what sanguines bring differently than melancholics is the hope that's associated with them, right?
Beautiful.
So the hope of the fulfillment of them.
Yes.
And so they really can be a witness that builds the faith and the hope of other people, but a witness of that charity as they've actually experienced the, at least a taste or a fulfillment that this is real. This is real. You don't have to go to the addictive behaviors because there's something better and I've tasted it and I've seen it. And it's good. And you can as well. So it's, again, one of those superpowers for the sanguine. Want to hop back into these don'ts here?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that was one of the first things you get to is like, just be careful not to crush those desires. The other thing is don't overemphasize structure. We already talked about the value of freedom. That's really important for them. And if it's arbitrary rules, it can be more imposing rather than guiding.
Yes. I think, too much rigidity can stifle the natural spontaneity and enthusiasm. Now, we're not saying to never have rules or rigidity, but you can make something even a schedule, which is probably like that type of word for a sanguine, like schedule.
Schedules are bad.
Into a game or a puzzle. So you can be like, okay, so here we have this day. And if it were a puzzle piece, what are we fitting? Like what's the thing that we're going to be doing in this moment of the day? That's just an example, but you can make it into a game. You can make it into a playful thing, invite them in to help you create it with them. But yeah,
I think of the environment of the classroom, just the very traditional classroom that we have. And I would say it can be a trigger condition for sanguines, especially for kids. Everything's organized, sitting in rows. You're working by yourself. You're not allowed to talk to anybody. Yeah,
I think Montessori actually, it's a better fit for sanguine kids. I'm not saying that across the board, but I do think that freedom to kind of move around and explore and talk to kids, but not like distract them. Like you're learning those skills of like living into your sanguine.
Yeah. If you're a melancholic teacher or a choleric teacher, right, that really enjoys those rules, or even a phlegmatic teacher, and you got sanguine kids, just recognize that they are going to need to have a little bit more unstructured time where they can kind of just be social. Be social.
Yes.
And be a little bit more creative here. So that's we're kind of even getting in some of the do's here as we talk, but
let's go to, all right. Don't dismiss their enthusiasm and avoid belittling their positivity and excitement about things, even if they seem trivial. I think that's big because it is big to them. And to just kind of be with them in it, like sharing in the joy with them in it. Match their enthusiasm, or you don't have to be as enthusiastic as them. It's like, that's great, but I think because they value connection so much, they want to share in joy with you. And I think a lot of times when we don't find things as important as they do, like we can kind of,
or we don't react the same way that they
inadvertently belittle it.
So I always go back to like the very first temperaments workshop that we did. And like we realized we were doing it for the girls soccer team over at Ave Maria University. And one of their coaches is super sanguine. She was sitting right in the front row and bing, Talia, she's smiling along. And when she realized that the people on her team didn't necessarily share the natural joy and excitement that she did. She stopped taking it so personally when other people wouldn't necessarily match her joy or her excitement. But it was also such a gift for her when people would, right?
Yes.
And so the sanguine personality often has, even in StrengthsFinder, a lot of those influencer talents there as well, and that high positivity. Influencer loves to see that they're making an impact on the person. Are moving the person emotionally in front of them. And so when you can kind of give them some sort of a feedback that, you are being affected or you are being moved in a positive way, that can just be a really great gift back to the sanguine child. Yeah.
I'm going to add in another one.
Okay.
Don't create arbitrary rules. This is actually also like a choleric thing. But explain why, like if you have a rule, explain why it benefits them and why they can actually live into their values a little bit more. So like, instead of being like, yeah, no, because I say so, right? Because they do value their freedom as well. It's more so, no, and here's why. And we can actually do this thing inside of this task.
Yeah, there's more joy, opportunity here. There's more creativity. There's more connection.
There's more optimism. Like, I need you to help influence and like cheer up so-and-so. Yes. Okay. They love that. So avoid that kind of, that arbitrary no's, right?
Yeah. And the final don't here that we've got is avoid shaming them for distractions. Okay.
It's kind of like shaming them for desires as well, because that's probably what they're distracted by, is like all the different desires.
They're looking for a dopamine hit. They're looking for something that's going to be like, give them that sense of excitement. And again, that can be ordered towards something that is really beautiful. It doesn't mean that they are allowed to just be completely ADD and all over the place. But there's a difference between, I know I always say squirrel, and it's, from that, whatever that movie Up is, where the dog keeps getting distracted by the squirrels, and that's often how it can be. But again, it's just recognizing that there's a sense of wonder. Yes. I think that's in the sanguine, and we can learn from that sense of wonder.
I think it's just pausing and going, hey, what are you thinking about? Like, that's not like, we're not saying do that all the time, right? If they need to be like doing their homework or whatever like that, there are ways of motivating them. We'll get into that a little bit, but like, hey, like if it is just they're out playing and they're just off doing whatever they want, like, hey, what are you thinking about? This is another thing too.
I think it's just reminding them too.
Yes.
Just like, hey, I'm just reminding you, this is what we're doing right now. This is what we're focusing on right now, especially teachers. Like, I get it. You want to do that. There can be time for that. This is what we're doing right now. This is where our focus is.
And they want to comply with you because
they don't
of
necessarily
that.
Fight back.
They don't know. And it's really just kind of like, and do it with a smile, because if they feel like you're mad at them, then they'll like, that's that shame that will happen.
Yeah, that triggers.
But like, just like, hey, so-and-so, we're focusing over here, once again, the apostle of the child, it demands us to grow in virtue too. And I understand a lot of these things that we're saying to do. It's like, yeah, but I have an entire classroom of kids and so on and so forth. But like, it's not every battle we're saying to engage. It's saying, okay, if this is like a real distraction for all the rest of the kids too, or there's like a number of them that are being distracted by this, you can kind of hone in on some of these techniques that we're
still the suggesting.
Yep. All right. Do's. The do's. Do encourage gratitude. I threw that one in there. Encourage gratitude, joy in the moment. This is really helpful for the kids who are going, dopamine. It's just like, what's great about this? And just challenging them to like go there, because they could find it. It's actually very helpful. That actually is really natural for them. But like, hey, what are like 5 things you can do here? And that's kind of getting into another one where it's getting into their creativity, but encourage gratitude, like, because gratitude is just so natural for them and they can do it.
You sound like Jiminy Glick there for a second.
What?
What's so great about this?
Well, you could do
like a fun activity over here.
You could do it in the Jiminy Glick voice and make yourself chuckle too. Okay, so encourage gratitude. That does help them. It helps ground them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Encourage creativity as well, right? So, Erin, we've talked about this before. It's like, find the novelty in what you're already doing.
Yes.
Right. And so even if, back to the Play-Doh example, where it's like, okay, yeah, I know you want to move on to another thing. Can you build me,
a house with a tree house,
3 different types of cookies with the Play-Doh.
Right. Or I'm really hungry. Can you make me some Play-Doh here? Or I'm going to kind of go into older kids too, sanguines, right? Who are like, maybe don't want to be studying. You could be like, okay, what are like 3 ways that you can study and entertain others at the same time? Like, I love this. I wish somebody asked me to do this back when I was studying things. Like, Erin, I want you to teach me this concept and make it super entertaining. Guess what? I'm going to learn that concept and I'm going to entertain you as I am teaching it. And, you know, guys, we learn concepts when we teach them, right? Way more than just memorizing them. So that it's just, okay, I understand that this is like a dreadful activity for you or whatever, or you're not like crazy about this activity, but what are creative ways of engaging it that fit you as a sanguine?
I actually had a shocking moment with Avila. Well, I threw it was a shock factor on her. She made me a nice little cookie from Play-Doh, and she goes, "Here you go, Dad." And I go, "Thanks." And I actually bit into the cookie.
Did it look so real?
And her face was just like she looked at me like, "Oh my gosh, Dad's gonna die. He actually ate the cookie. I fooled my father. He actually thought it was a real cookie." It was funny.
Did you do it on purpose?
I totally did it on purpose.
Okay.
Like I was like, we're going here.
Yes.
I'm trusting that, you know, Play-Doh made this so that it doesn't poison kids that eat it accidentally, or adults that eat it on purpose to shock their melancholic kids. Anyways, back to what we got. Let's number 2 of the
encourage gratitude.
We're on number 3.
Encourage creativity. Yes.
All right. Now we're on provide social opportunities.
Yes. Like if they can do something in a group, do it. Like if they can do it alongside of other kids, do it. If you have a ton of kids in your family and you're like, all right, everybody's goal is to do your own chores, and sanguine, yes, you still have chores to do. And I want you getting everyone excited too. Like that's like you're providing them these social opportunities.
If it's just with other sanguines though, and you actually need them to get something done, and it's probably not the best combination there. I think you might want to make sure they got a melancholic or a phlegmatic that's on the team.
Or choleric. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody who's going to finish the task is really helpful.
But the sea of sanguines will have some great ideas. Great ideas.
My mom, I remember my mom she would write all these little journals about us and like put a picture of us when we were little. Oh, Aaron, I'm so proud of you for this. Trish, blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, Sandy that. And one of the things that she would always write about me, and I was kind of the outlier in my family. I was the only sanguine, you know, it was just funny because my dad is primarily sanguine and I have 5 kids. I was like the only other sanguine. And the one thing that she would always say is like, you'll never worry about friends. You always have tons of friends and you're likable and you're generous and you're nice. And it was like such a sanguine thing, but like to encourage that and like be like, look, this is actually a skill of yours. This is a raw talent. Not everybody can make friends with a tree stump, you know, or can make friends and like carry on those friendships and like people actually trust you and like maybe not rely on you all the time because you might not follow through with things, but people like you. So I thought that was like really helpful. And my mom was always really good about like providing those opportunities. My mom and dad, providing those social opportunities, but it will drain them if they are doing things in isolation a lot. Like you'll just lose that motivation for them.
Finally here.
Yeah. And then finally is encourage their optimism, celebrate their positive outlook while gently guiding them to handle challenges realistically. Like, I think that's really helpful. I would say that's probably helpful for some older kids too. And just being like, look, we got to get this thing done. And I love it how optimistic you are. I love it how you're so gracious and like, and how can we do that? And I think sanguines they probably respond the best to a lot of our motivation stuff that we do with temperaments. Just using those motivational words for them. Like, how do we do this in your own unique way? How do you do this in like a new way today? How do we actually, I think there's
in a fun way, in a creative way,
yes,
in a more, exciting way,
how do I
joyful way,
even just asking them for help. How do I make this more fun? Like, or I'm having a group of people over. If you have like some older sanguines, I'm having a group of people over. Can you help me think of like an activity that we could do to help like break the ice or whatever? Like they love making things more compelling and more fun for people.
That was a huge gift, Aaron. When we started doing youth ministry together, I was just like preparing our lessons like I was giving a lecture in Quantico. And Aaron's like, how about some icebreakers? I was like, stupid, lame. And then we did an icebreaker and I was like, can we just do nothing but icebreakers?
That worked.
They're engaged. They're hanging out. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to our niece, you gave that example of being like, okay, like, yes, like we have some boundaries. We're not going to do this, but hey, here's a little fun assignment that you can do with the actual thing that you're playing with right now. Like, make me 10 cookies and like create a bakery, or hey, encourage Avila to make these with you, or, that kind of stuff. So do you have any other suggestions? Because I know you've coached sanguines before, and it doesn't have to be a kid, but it could be kind of a lesson that we can learn from it.
No, I think with what I found is they often are looking for somebody to help lead their focus a little bit, right? They're seeking joy, but it can be overwhelming. They can feel even overwhelmed
100%.
with the lack of focus.
Yes.
And so it can be a great gift to the sanguine to be like, hey, I get it. You want to do this. We're just focusing on this right now. There's going to be opportunities to do this. I'm not going to ask you to focus here for hours, right? But just for the next such and such minutes. And then we can move on to something else. For the kids, we can move on. We're going to clean everything else up first. Some of the things I like with Montessori is when Avila was there, whenever they moved on to a new task, they always had to take the task that they were working on and whatever it was, project, their work, and put it back on the shelf.
Yes.
Just so they can actually close the loop. And so sanguines, they're not necessarily going to be the cleanest, bedroom type people. And, but just helping them to close one box before they open another one can be something like helps bring a lot of interior peace to a sanguine that has big desires.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Cause we actually had parents ask us like, how do we help our sanguine phlegmatic child be not so messy? And I'm like, I don't know. Because that was me. I was so messy. And I think eventually when I was like, no, I actually value having a cleaner house more than it being messy.
But sometimes the answer too is like less stuff in your life, less stimulation, less
that's
distraction.
True. That's true. And I think it's just, I think it's really, I think it's like, how do we make it easier to get to the things that you love? Quicker, And
jumpstarting that interior creativity, because it's easy to get a dopamine hit, especially with phones nowadays, by just going on Instagram and swipe, right? You get the novelty that you're looking for, but when you have to create that novelty, and even better, like when you get to co-create novelty with God, right? That's where those big sanguine desires and the desire for something new and creative can really be a great conduit to a deeper relationship with God.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to add one more thing to answer that question. I think you teach them how. I think you teach them how to clean their room. Like, I hate to say it, but like, I think they think that it's super hard. Partially maybe nobody's taught them. Like, the melancholic could just learn it. They could probably teach their friends how to do it because they know how to do it. I do think that's helpful for you to teach all temperaments how to clean and organize.
I think it's applicable across the board. Just get the standard in place. I think
that's right.
I think the melancholic will enjoy having the order, much more. And so it's more of an intrinsic motivation to keep things.
Yes.
Like we've realized, and this is like such a gold mine, that Abby likes cleaning.
Yes.
She likes cleaning stuff up. And we're like, oh my goodness. And so we invite her to help clean. Awesome.
The other day I was like, where's Avila? She's like, I'm organizing your shoes in your closet, Mom. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. But okay. So I think when you couple it with something that they love to do, a sanguine, I think teach them how to do it. Give them places to put things like, hey, all of your Barbies go here and all of your toys, balls, whatever it is that you're playing with, go into this thing. But I think when it's time to do it, be like, do you want to listen to a book on tape while you're doing it? Do you want to listen to some music? I think that's actually really helpful because it will, kind of stimulate their fun activity. Habit stacking.
Just laughing at... Here's a box for all your balls, sanguines. Got Barbies over here, but then for all the balls, like here's
I don't know.
It's like generic toy. Insert generic toy.
I was going to say like
balls.
trucks or whatever, but That's anyway.
Okay. Are we good?
Yes.
All right. That's what we got. So do's and don'ts of parenting, not choleric, sanguine children.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, if you haven't, go into the show notes, download that parenting in your temperament guide, that quick guide that we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we've taken people through it a couple times already. Goodness gracious, when we were making it, we have a whole story about how when we made it, it was just like we were being convicted. I'll own it. I was being convicted, going through a lot of the choleric frustrations that show up. I was like, goodness gracious, this is so me. So it can be very helpful, and it's a great growth tool for creating more connection and just peace in your home. So,
but you're gonna want to go through it with a coach. Like I think you'll get the most out of it with a coach. And so we have our online academy where you can get as much one-on-one coaching as you possibly want. You can bring that guide to any one of the coaches that are available to you and say like, hey, can you help sort through this? Because so much of this, guys, and we're going to get into this later in the series, but so much of this is our mindset and our judgments about our children of these temperaments. And that needs to be cleaned up first. It does. Like before you can take any of these strategies, any of these do's and apply them to your actual parenting, you're going to want to clean up your thoughts about your kids, because if those judgments are not addressed, you're going to go right back into your original patterns.
Yep. Clean the inside of the house.
That's right. So
inside of the cup.
Come join our academy. Even if it's for a month, you can take this guide and actually get some work done.
Yeah. Start your 7-day free trial. Cool. All right, guys. We will continue on with our other types of children, temperament types.
Yes.
Types. As we continue on with just helping formators to form their kids in their life a little bit better. But like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for sticking with us in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. If you like what you heard,
please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.